Sekeres and Price for Thursday, March 28th, 2024, coming to you from the Go-Goat Sports Studio, built by Arbor Lee here at the iconic Wall Center, downtown Vancouver. If you're heading to a game, an event downtown, make it a staycation. Call the Wall, 604-331-1000. Ask for the Sekeres and Price rate. Some blackout dates apply. Matt Sekeres alongside Irf Gaffar sitting in for Blake Price today. Grady Sass hitting switches, conducting things. Big show coming up, all brought to you by Applewood Auto Group. We're right now at Applewood Nissan Surrey, the 2023 Nissan Qashqai finance at 2.99%, up to 36 months. The 2024 Nissan Leaf, up to $13,000 cash back, including rebates. It's all good at Applewood. Tim Horton's poll question today, we are asking you if the Canucks have to pay market rate for one of their upcoming free agents, who should it be? You can vote for Teddy Bluger, Filip Hronek, Dakota Joshua, Nikita Zadorov. Vote at Sekeres and Price on Twitter and YouTube. Roll up to win here for Tim's 60th anniversary. Play on the Tim's app to win prizes. Daily cash jackpot at $10,000 can win the all-electric Volkswagen ID4 and a sun-soaked Hilton getaway. Download the Tim's app. Roll up on till March 31st. Good to see you back. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, here tomorrow as well.
Yep.
Answer me the poll. We're paying a market price for one of these UFAs. Who are you paying?
I think Filip Hronek's the answer because the value of the other three is just way too high. I don't think that you can pay Nikita Zadorov $5-point-something million. And for Dakota Joshua and Teddy Bluger, as great as those stories have been, if you can't find value types of players in your bottom 6 forward group, there's a problem organizationally. I really do think that. I mean, $3 million for Dakota Joshua, go get your money is what I say to you, because you should. Same with Teddy Bluger. I know the experience and things like that, but you need to be able to find guys at value. So I'm going Hronek, but I don't think it can be that high, the market value price.
So Hronek and our friends at AFP Analytics, who do a terrific job of forecasting what NHL contracts come in at, and if you take a look at how they did predictively last year on the market, it was pretty good, reasonably close. I'm going to read you what they are calling for with the 4 players mentioned. Filip Hronek on a short-term deal, they say 3 years, come in about $6.31 million. On a long-term deal, 7 years, looking at 8.36. Bluger they have on a 2-year deal at 2.55. Joshua on a 3-year deal at $3 million per, as Irf forecasted. Zadorov, we did this last week, 4 years, 5.1. Ironically, we do not have Elias Lindholm on this list. He's a UFA too, but
yes,
he would come in at a 7-year deal at a shade over $8 million too. $8 million per. I'm with you, Irf. I'm going with Filip Hronek. I realize he's the most expensive. You may get better bang for your buck. I know you like the bang for buck on Bluger, but he is also the hardest to replace.
Yeah.
That if you are moving on from Filip Hronek, first of all, you're trading him, but you're not trading him from a position of leverage. And then you're on the market for a top pair right shot defenseman who can play in all situations. So look, I think I've said this many times, I think you're pot committed on Filip Hronek. I agree with Frank Seravalli and others who say, look, don't nickel dime here. Go out and pay the man. You know he works beside Quinn Hughes. You know the impact he has had on your team when you take a look at the vast improvement the Canucks have made over the course of this last year. Yeah, you would love for him to be able to anchor his own pair and play somebody else with Quinn Hughes who's effective, but the fact of the matter is you have stumbled upon one of the better defense pairs in the National Hockey League. And in fact, they're going to see one tonight, I think, as well in Dallas. We'll get into that in a second. So go ahead and pay Hronek and find your bottom 6 forwards elsewhere. If I had a second choice, it would be Joshua, though. Do you think he brings some elements to the Canucks that they haven't had before? And not to mention what a season he's had, including, and I was reminded of this listening to Coach Taka yesterday. Irf, do you remember the beginning of the year and like Taka challenged him publicly? and look how that has worked out. We'll get into it here in a second. Our top story today, Clinch 2.0, their second opportunity to clinch a berth in the Stanley Cup playoffs. The first time since 2020, but of course that was the bubble, and a berth in the Cup playoffs was earned via a play-in series. But the first time in 9 years to make the traditional Stanley Cup playoffs. At stake tonight, Thursday at Rogers Arena, there are 3 clinching scenarios. The cleanest is just beat the Dallas Stars.
I'm going to just leave it at that. Just take care of your business.
Win and you're in. They get 1 point versus Dallas, so a regulation or shootout loss, and St. Louis loses in any fashion, they're also in. They can also get in without winning tonight. They can get in with the Minnesota Wild losing to San Jose, and in any fashion, and the St. Louis Blues losing in regulation. So 3 different clinching scenarios, 2 of them a combination. The easiest, the neatest, just beat the Dallas Stars. Dakota Joshua returning to the lineup for the first time in 19 games. He missed 18 games with this hand injury after the fight against Mackenzie Entwistle and the Chicago Blackhawks. He gets back in alongside Arshdeep Bains. Recalled yesterday, Phil DiGiuseppe, Nils Oman are going to sit down. First of all, another indication that Rick Tocchet really likes Arshdeep Bains, huh?
Yeah, and I think it's one of 2 things. I think he likes that there is that chance of an offensive output from Arshdeep. The guy can score the goal or score a goal. We've seen it happen in the American Hockey League. He hasn't done it here at the NHL level yet. But another thing is, how much does he really trust Phil DiGiuseppe and Nils Oman? I think that for me is a bigger issue. You're getting a guy that only played, not even a handful of games here, went back down, and then got called back up. And you have 2 guys that have played in this season all season long. So how much are you really trusting those 2 guys is a bigger question for me.
Well, maybe it has something to do with what Coach was talking about after practice on Wednesday, and that is that we are in the stretch drive here, and he wants a playoff mentality. Let's hear from Coach Tocchet on it's go time.
Listen, you're not going to be on your game all the time. You're not going to be mentally into it. But I think at this point of the season, for some guys, you got to train your mind now. This is like, it's go time. 10 games left. There's some details that you have to do it most of the time now. This is not November hockey. And I think that's sometimes we got to just remind him.
And may very well be reminders for Nils Oman and Phil DiGiuseppe that it is not November hockey. And I like the way Tocchet messaged that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think when you look at it, just going back to, the Arshdeep Bains, call up again and things like that, he's earned it. And I think that you play a little bit harder. That NHL salary is a lot different than the one in Abbotsford and the minors. So that he's going to come in and want to make an impact. And I agree with Rick Tocchet. I mean, look, the Canucks have had so much success this season. You can afford a night off here and there, but with the 10 games left, you want to be and need to be playing at your best come round 1, game 1. And I don't think that he's seen that in his team of late. I know they've had some wins and they've gone about their business, and you beat the Calgary Flames, but then you lose to the LA Kings, and you're not going to like that game. The Dallas Stars are a good hockey team. It's a good opponent. So you're going out, your message to your team is, we're not playing to our capabilities, and we need to figure out how we do that in the next couple of weeks.
Dakota Joshua, as mentioned, returns to the lineup after missing 18 games, a remarkable season to date, 53 games, 13 goals, 13 assists, 26 points, playing more than 14 minutes a night for the Vancouver Canucks. Let's remember, this guy was signed. He was a fringe NHL player. The Canucks thought they saw something there, that he could be a better NHL player or play a more impactful role, a bit of a late bloomer, and he has been all of those things. We heard from him on his return to the lineup, and, he says this was a long time coming.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. It's been a long time coming, so it's really nice to be back out there with the guys and, just be fully a part of the group again. It's been feels like forever, but at this point, just, happy that that's behind me and, moving forward.
He would go on to add that he didn't expect to be out this long, like this is the far end of the 6-week timetable that he was given when he initially hurt the hand in that fight. He also said he didn't regret the fight, although his agent may regret the fight, given what he stands to make this summer. And Coach Tocchet also commented on Joshua returning to lineup and how much they've missed him because, let's face it, he's a different profile of winger than what they have. Let's hear from Tocchet.
You know, when you look at that LA game, that's where Dakota is, you know, he's that guy that can, you know, get that puck around the net. And obviously the way he's, you know, over the last year, how he's gotten better and better, how his season started didn't go great, and how he took the information, the way he's, you know, I mean, for arguably that 6-7 weeks or 2 months there, I mean, that line was cooking, and he was a big reason for it.
Remember we were talking about JT Miller's comments on Tuesday about getting inside against the LA Kings? I think Coach just red circled it for us. That's a guy who can get on the inside and get to the tough areas, score those short area goals.
Yeah, that's why he's inside the lineup and on the top line, right? By all accounts, he's gonna guy that's gonna crash and bang, a guy that's gonna, you know, get into those dirty areas and make things happen and be a player that the Canucks desperately, you know, need right now. He's got 13 goals, 13 assists for 26, 46 penalty minutes, 4 game-winning goals. You know,
big goals too. He scored big goals.
And the funny thing is, Matt, we go back to when you just mentioned, you know, he was called out by his coach. When a player gets called out by their coach publicly for not playing well is one thing, but when the coach or said person questions your professionalism, questions if this is something that you need to be doing, questions your mindset and things like that, you take it to heart. And Dakota Joshua has obviously made the right choices and now come back.
And Tocchet has found the right buttons to push and has found different ways to coach the different individuals on this team and get the most out of them. It has truly been one of the great coaching jobs that I have seen in covering more than 20 years of the National Hockey League, and I think he should win the Jack Adams this year, so long as they don't collapse down the stretch. Look, Joshua's going to play with Miller and Besser. What do you think of the assignment for him? Because that's pretty good territory, pretty good real estate if you're Joshua.
Well, and I think if you're, you know, Rick Tocchet, you're saying let's just get him involved. Let's get him on the ice a lot. Let's get him crashing and banging, playing with 2 guys that, you know, that can get the puck to the net. You know, he's going to go out and he's going to throw some hits early on in the game to get a feel for it after coming back. You know, he's obviously not afraid of the injury. There's probably nothing there that's bothering him anymore. Brock and JT are shoot first guys. So, you know what Dakota Joshua's job is to make, you know, the opposing guy's life miserable. In the offensive zone.
And head to the net for the rebounds as well.
Well, absolutely.
I would suspect. I think, you know, there are going to be some clean up the garbage opportunities available for Dakota Joshua for however long he stays on this Miller-Besser line. Look, one of the reasons he's there, the Vancouver Canucks need or want Pius Suter back at center ice. They need or want Pius Suter back at center ice because Elias Lindholm continues to be out, has not practiced, did not partake in the optional morning skate on Thursday. Coach Tocchet's still calling it a nagging injury, said, quote, a little nagging that's getting better every day. And if that is in fact the case, then yes, it is wise, it is prudent to keep him out of these games, make sure he gets a couple before the Stanley Cup playoffs. So you've got Suter back centering a line. And look, I'll say this, Irf, it wasn't that long ago where we were all here fretting their depth at center ice. You take a look at where it's at now. And remember, because a lot of people thought Miller was better on the wing. There was no Teddy Bluger here. There was no Pius Suter here. We weren't sure whether Nils Amon was going to be an everyday NHLer. And, of course, they have added other guys who can play center ice as well. We haven't seen a lot of Sam Lafferty there, but he can play center ice as well. Like, where would they be without the center depth that they were able to acquire
I think
over the offseason?
Exactly. You'd be starting off with the puck a lot less, right? And if you're a team that, you know, cares about puck possession and controlling the pace and the tempo of the game, your centers are very important to your lineup. Elias Lindholm, since the trade, since the All-Star break, has been one of, if not the best NHL faceoff man in the National Hockey League. So missing him is obviously huge for this team. I think he's going to be out for one, if not at least tonight, maybe a little bit more than that, to be completely honest. I think the nagging injury, it happened, you know, here as a member of the Vancouver Canucks, you know, I don't want to say a few, maybe a little bit. It was on the road. I don't think it was at home when he did get hurt. So I think when you go and look at it, you know, it's just a matter of being able to get him back into 100% before the playoffs start. I assume him and Demko both probably going to get a couple games, maybe Lindholm a little bit more than Demko before the playoffs. But yeah, I mean, you mentioned it. Center ice depth is something that they desperately didn't have.
Yes.
And now they definitely do.
And now they're awash in
Yeah.
it, especially when you look at Suter's playing more than 15 minutes a night. In fact, almost 16 a night. Bluger is cresting 15 minutes a night. As mentioned, even Lafferty's playing 12 minutes a night. Could play in the middle. Oman's playing 10 minutes and change when he does play. So, yeah, and Lindholm on the entirety of the season is playing nearly 20 minutes a night. Now, that includes his time with the Calgary Flames. As a Vancouver Canuck, Elias Lindholm is playing 17:41 a night. And, of course, we know he's gone from being Calgary's first-line center to being Vancouver's third-line center. The power play. I spent some time talking about it with Jeff. As you know, Jeff has been hammering at the power play. They got to get this power play.
Yeah.
Taka was asked why no Höglander on power play 1, even though they're looking for a left shot, or at least people think that they need a left shot to play in that spot alongside JT Miller and be a threat. So Höglander not on power play 1, and coach said that there's a reason why they have some concerns that they've seen from him on power play 2. Do you get it?
Yeah, I mean,
I'm not sure I get it.
I think that
I trust Tocchet and the coaching staff on this decision, but I'm just, I'm sitting there looking at a power play that's been, let's face it, not very good for several months now. And a guy with 22 goals who is the left shot, I'd at least want to see him there before the end of the regular season.
Where are you putting him? In the bumper spot?
Yeah.
In the middle? I think that maybe that they just don't think he's playing that area on the power play. I think maybe it's different. I mean, look, you're right. 22 goals this year. He's having a hell of a season. But I think that when you look at it on the power play, like if I'm them, obviously when Lindholm, if he does get healthy, I am shocked that they didn't load up the power play. And the fact that they went to switching JT Miller and taking him and Elias Pettersson to separate them, that to me was shocking. Like, you have good players, you have superstar players, just let them figure it out, right? Maybe don't need to make a change with the personnel as opposed to making a change as to where they play.
It's Irf. I heard all of the concern and the criticism after the Lindholm trade about acquiring a guy who was going to upset the chemistry a little bit, given how well the season had gone. In fact, I heard it in my own household. And she is still lording that victory over me. But I'm like you. I can't believe that they brought him in, that they made accommodation for him on the power play, that the power play got worse, and that it has continued to struggle now, even in his absence. Excuse me. Dallas in town.
Yep.
And how about this record-wise? Vancouver 45 victories, Dallas 45 victories. Vancouver 19 regulation losses, Dallas 19 regulation losses. Canucks have 8 defeats in overtime and the shootout. Stars have 9 with 1 game in hand. Of course, this is a battle for the lead in the Western Conference. We've got a scenario tonight whereby Dallas can extend the 1-point advantage over the Canucks, 99 points to 98, with a regulation with any win. You also have a scenario where both teams could wind up with 100 points tonight if the Canucks win beyond regulation and Dallas picks up a point. Of course, Colorado is lurking there as well. And it's getting interesting because Vegas, Nashville in the wild card spots, Vegas with a chance to leapfrog the LA Kings and get into the Pacific Division playoffs, where they will most likely play the Edmonton Oilers. Nashville now with an outside chance of passing Winnipeg to get into the Central Division playoffs, bumping the Jets to a wild card. As J-Pat notes, this game tonight about as even as it gets. Vancouver with 3 players who have 80 plus. Dallas with 720 goal scorers, but nobody at 80 points. Canucks with 4 20 goal scorers. And then there's the matchup on defense, Irf, where, and you wanted to talk about this, and it's a great shout because Hughes and Hronek back together. The anchor his own pair thing didn't last very long. And what we anticipate from the Dallas Stars is a defense pair of Thomas Harley, who's on 15 goals this year, and Miro Heiskanen, one of the great young defensemen in the game. Hughes versus Heiskanen, and these two top pairs against each other. Quite a night to watch defensemen play.
Oh, absolutely. Heiskanen's ridiculous. Like, I think he's so underrated when it comes to star defensemen at a young age. He doesn't get the love that Makar and Hughes gets, maybe because he doesn't play that, sexy game. He's got only 8 goals this year. He's got 40 assists, right? And it's just wild as opposed to how good he's been for that lineup. And they got Esa Lindell as well on that back end. Now Christopher Tanev as well. But, two top 10 draft picks, defensemen going head to head. I mean, your guys that, if you like watching Quinn Hughes be able to skate the puck and move the puck up and down the ice, watch Miro Heiskanen play because he does it at basically almost the same skill level.
Harley's 15 goals rank 5th in the league. Hughes, of course, leads all defensemen in scoring at 81 points. Heiskanen with 48 points is 11th. Is 11th? Yeah, 11th on the list of top scoring defensemen in the National Hockey League. And, I think going forward, I think we're talking about two guys who are going to be perennial Norris candidates in Quinn Hughes and Miro Heiskanen. And, of course, Cale Makar will be there as well. Hughes goes into the night with a 3-point lead on Cale Makar for defenseman scoring. We got word from Talkit this morning and the Canucks that Arturs Silovs may play the Easter Sunday game, matinee, 12:30 against the Anaheim Ducks after Casey DeSmith has carried the mail here in place of Thatcher Demko. Of course, yesterday the Canucks, in a procedural move, putting Thatcher Demko on LTIR means he can't return until the Kings game on April 6th at the earliest, although you think he's going to be a little longer than that.
Yeah, it
right?
could be. I mean, you're in no rush to bring him back, right? And, he's going to want to get in, but I think that they have a date set, and I think it's very fluid. It's one of those situations where you look at it, it's probably pretty fluid for a guy like Demko. He's going to want to come back and get into the speed of game and things like that. But if you're the Canucks and he's still feeling any sort of lingering effects from his injury, you just keep him off. You've awarded yourself with all of this leeway and points and things like that. You're not chasing for certain positioning in the playoffs. So why not? If he needs the extra day or two past when their date is, just I would say, honestly, give it to him.
Silovs played 5 games for the Vancouver Canucks last year. He won 3 of them with a 2.75 goals against and a 908 save percentage. And that is saying something given the state of the Canucks franchise last year and how just awful they were. Then, of course, he went to the World Championships for Latvia, where he was the tournament best player.
Yep.
MVP. Won 7 of the 10 games for his home country with a 220 goals against and a 921 save percentage. Now, Abbotsford this year, 15-11-6, a 907 save, a 274 goals against, and Nikita Tolopilo has earned himself more playing time in the Abbotsford goal. I like this move by the Canucks if they are going Silovs on Sunday, and I would suspect they win. I would suspect they would, particularly if they win tonight. If they lose tonight, then you've lost 2 in a row, and maybe there's a second thought on that. We'll see. Also, as we have long discussed, there are not a lot of tight turnarounds left for the Vancouver Canucks, so you have had the ability to rest Casey DeSmith in the starter's role, a position of which he is unaccustomed, but he's played the last 6 games. Tonight will make the 7th game in a row. But I did want to see him again in the NHL this year. So remember, we started the year before DeSmith was acquired, or talking about Silovs potentially being the backup.
Yeah.
Here. So I think it's good to get him another NHL look here at some point, or at least one NHL look. Maybe there's an opportunity for him to play a second game somewhere down the road here before Demko returns from injury. And I gotta say, the goaltender depth chart has certainly become a bigger priority for NHL teams than it used to be. It used to be a lot of teams that were just happy to have a star goaltender and will backfill with whomever as the backup, and even not even, give much of a consideration as to who was the number 3, who was the number 4 on the farm. Now it seems like some teams are really taking the goalie depth chart even down to the 5th organizational goalie.
Well, I think the biggest thing is the workload, right? I think back in the day, you used to look at some of these goalies and go, they're playing 60, 62, 63, some close to 65 games, right? And that's just way too much if you think you're going to be a good hockey team and go into the playoffs and have some success. You want your goalie to be your best player when he needs to be. So for the Vancouver Canucks, I mean, look, Thatcher Demko is going to be Thatcher Demko, and you're going to get him in the playoffs. Casey DeSmith might be their best acquisition, probably there is this season. Getting him just before the start of training camp there, the regular season. Seelovs is an interesting one to me because if he gets to play, I know he's made 5 starts or 5 games already in the National Hockey League, but if he gets to play, it's always the age-old thing. Guys play hard for their starting goalie, play harder for their backup goalie, but a third guy coming in, I'm not saying
especially
it, but
a young guy.
There should be a lot of block shots in front of him on Sunday if he does play.
That's right. How about this? It hit my inbox last night. I know it hit your inbox as well. The Vancouver Canucks are advertising playoff tickets, everybody, even before they've clinched a berth in the Stanley Cup playoffs. For some, that might go against hockey culture, hockey code, but really, it's a mathematical inevitability at this stage of the game. As we mentioned earlier in the program, a win tonight, or there are other clinching scenarios with losses by St. Louis and by the Minnesota Wild. But at some point here, the Vancouver Canucks are going to be a Stanley Cup playoff team again. And the Canucks are asking you to sign up, provide an email address for, quote, early access. Now, the tickets are not yet on sale. And of course, we don't know how many tickets the season ticket subscribers are going to eat up. I would suspect that a lot of season ticket subscribers, I mean, if you're in for a penny, you're in for a pound at this point, are going to be taking advantage of their access to Stanley Cup playoff seats. You sign up, the Canucks will notify you whether or not you have the right to buy tickets. We also haven't seen the prices yet of the tickets. Are we to believe that they are going to be very expensive?
Probably. I mean, history would suggest that they would be, right? And I think that, look, it's tough to go to I mean, even right now, Matt, on the secondary market, hard to find tickets, and they're not cheap.
It is.
Right? And when they were bad, okay, totally fair. The Canucks were in the last few years, the Canucks have been a pretty easy go. On any given night, you can get in, take the family, if you want, you can go to a game and it's an affordable cost. Now, it's the hottest ticket in town. The team's playing well. They're, fighting for a President's Trophy. You're going to make the playoffs. There is that hope that, you might get past one round. People are going to want to go to games, right? Chris Tanev coming back tonight, the Dallas Stars, the history of the 2 ownership groups there. So there's a lot that goes into things. Thursday on a long weekend. So you can expect for playoffs, tickets are the price will be high.
I think so. And also, I mean, Irf, this time last year, our friends and collaborators here at Go Goat, we couldn't give the seats away.
Yeah.
Maybe on a Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
But midweek games, couldn't give the seats away a year ago. And that was much the same many years previous to that with the Vancouver Canucks. The demand for tickets started early this year. It started after the first 2 wins against the Edmonton Oilers. Needless to say, they made quite an impression, scoring all those goals against Edmonton on opening night at Rogers Arena. Then coming back on that Saturday and beating them again with Casey DeSmith standing on his head. Continued that road trip. Of course, got that nice comeback win in Florida. And people are like, wow, a winning road trip. They haven't buried themselves for the first time in several years. The other thing is we know that Vancouver is an event town, and we haven't had this event in 9 years. The last time the Canucks were in the Stanley Cup playoffs, it was in an empty building in Edmonton with the bubble. So, I think the demand for tickets, and particularly the first round, because let's face it, we don't know how long this is going to go. Plus, the first round is typically a cheaper ticket than forthcoming rounds. Those of you who were around in 2011 remember that. So I think the demand for tickets is going to be massive. And what I'm very much looking forward to is, the crackle, the energy in the building, but beyond just the building, in the community for the Stanley Cup playoffs. There's nothing like a Canadian city when the local NHL team is in the Stanley Cup playoffs. And I think we are awfully thirsty here in Vancouver and in British Columbia to get that feeling back, to have those experiences again and have these events back in our town.
No, absolutely. And I think it's great for this city. I mean,
for sure.
Like, this city is alive when the playoffs are going on. I mean, obviously, the Whitecaps and the Lions do well. It is to an extent, but the Vancouver Canucks are in the playoffs, and especially where they are in the standings, I think that's what makes it so much more exciting, to be honest.
And look, we know hockey is king in Canada, and it's always going to be a leg up on the other sports. But like, take no further look than that weekend in November, when the Caps and Lions both hosted playoff games on the same weekend and both did 30,000.
Yeah.
Now, in the case of the Caps, it was a very good season, better than previous years. And I think there was a lot of excitement about that. In the case of the Lions, they were building off what was a previous good year, but they had some lean times before. But I think you can argue that some of the reason why people were so geeked for those playoff games and that weekend that BC plays is because the Canucks had been so miserable, because the Canucks have not been able to provide that experience to their fans and to the city for the last 9 years, with the caveat of the bubble playoffs in 2020. Anyways, so looking forward to it. And tomorrow you're back here with me on Friday.
Absolutely.
We may very well be talking about the Vancouver Canucks having clinched a playoff spot. Let's get to today's menu. It is a presentation of Ben Moss Jewelers. Ben Moss Jewelers, proudly Canadian-owned, operated, history dating back more than 100 years. 5 locations in BC, including Willowbrook and Langley, Coquitlam Center. Committed to customer satisfaction. You can check out the large selection of Canadian mined diamonds, lab-grown diamonds. These mined diamonds available with a payment plan to suit your needs. For more info, check out benmoss.com. Ben Moss, because love is timeless. We'll talk to Frank Seravalli here, NHL insider, planning to discuss with Frank, including Elias Lindholm, his injury, whether it's going to be a complication for the Canucks going forward. Let's remember, he is an unrestricted free agent. He has got a lot to lose if the injury gets worse. We'll talk to him about Filip Hronek. We'll talk to him about the Stanley Cup playoffs moving up to Saturday, April 20th, from what the National Hockey League originally put on its website of Monday, April 22nd, and about whether or not they're going to ask the Canucks to play that night, even though they're traveling back from Winnipeg 2 nights earlier. Talk to Frank about the story that reared its head, or the debate that reared its head on hockey Twitter this week. Is the game turning into a rich kid's sport? Are average families, middle-class families, able to afford hockey going forward, especially elite hockey? If you do have a kid who's great, how are you able to get them through and finance all of the different costs associated with elite level hockey these days? So a good conversation with Frank coming on up. We'll do some hashtags, the best and worst of Twitter, including an amazing story from Rex Chapman on his former teammate Victoria's Steve Nash, who was a precocious rookie for the Phoenix Suns all those years ago. We'll talk to Patrick Johnson, talk to him about Canucks culture. He wrote a good piece this week on Canucks culture and how it has changed, not to mention Dakota Joshua, Chris Tanev feature in that conversation. We'll get to some Major League Baseball opening day. And sad to report, a lengthy list of errors and omissions today.
Hey, you. No, not you. You. Are you an owner-operator? Do you have a fleet of trucks or cars? Well, CalPro Plus might be the dedicated tire program just for you.
Free program includes exclusive deals and savings, price match guarantee, flexible financing, and preferred pricing on everything you drive.
Also, you get a dedicated member support line. That means that you can get questions answered. Also, they'll source and recommend the right tire for you, your application, and your budget.
Cal Tire's network of 260 plus stores are here to help so you can focus on the road ahead. Sign up for free at calproplus.com.
In a season like this, you never want to miss a single second of what's happening on the ice, and you want to be around your fellow fans, right? Well, Greta Bar YVR at 50 West Cordova, the perfect spot to do so. Hey, if you've got tickets, a great place to pre and post. They've got drink specials every single day. And if you don't have tickets, well, stick around and soak up the atmosphere with all your fellow fans, play all the great video games and air hockey, great air hockey set up as well at Greta Bar YVR. We'll see you there, 50 West Cordova.
NHL insider Frank Seravalli of the Frankly Speaking podcast and the Daily Faceoff, the one national guy who told you Elias Pettersson was signing for 8 years while others were sitting there telling you, maybe it'll be 4 or 5. How you doing, Frank? Good to see you.
Yeah, I'm good. What's going on?
Well, opening day. Got your Phillies sweater on.
At least got to wait till tomorrow. We were rained out today.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
It'll be good. Looking forward to baseball season.
Yeah, ditto. Elias Lindholm missed the game on Monday, did not practice on Wednesday. Rick Tocchet has called it a nagging injury, Frank, but how concerned should the Canucks be here that their prime deadline acquisition, albeit 6 weeks before the deadline, may be compromised in the playoffs? And of course, has to think about his pending unrestricted free agency.
Yeah, I've heard that part of it be a talking point. I don't really put much stock and or faith in that, because the best way to increase your value is to play. You've already, this year with the drop in point production, there's already been some damage done. It's not going to be any worse than it is right now. The best thing you can do for yourself if you're Lindholm is come back and have a tremendous playoff. So I think the motivation is clear on his end, what the best thing to do is. For me, I think there certainly is there has to be some concern from the Canucks end that you at least allow yourself the proper runway for this to get right. I don't know all the details. In fact, I don't know many details at all when it comes to Lindholm's injury, aside from some of the speculation that's been out there. The Canucks have been incredibly tight-lipped about it. What I would say is that if it really is a nagging thing, hold him out as long as necessary to get as close to, right as possible to give your team every opportunity when it matters most. Timeline wise, these last 10 games, you've got a healthy enough lead over the Oilers. Demko is, I think, going to get enough time to get himself set and get into at least a little bit of a rhythm before the postseason, and just give Lindholm whatever time necessary. That's how I would look at it.
Yeah, when you look at the Lindholm situation, Frank, you mentioned obviously that's got to be in the back of his mind and his camp's mind of not being able to go out there and put up points during the regular season, but it is the playoffs, and that's the reason why they brought him here. How much is his value, do you think? You mentioned as well that, it's obviously the down year. How much do you think it's gone down as opposed to, what it was when it was an all-time high with Calgary?
Yeah, I think a pretty significant amount. I would say that there was a lot of talk in the tail end of, going into this last season in Calgary of, hey, he wants $9 million a year. Yeah. And, he's a number one center in the NHL. Well, I think neither one of those things are going to end up being true. I think he's a strong number two center. I think the mercurial nature of his point production shows that, in my view, that it's largely driven by who he plays with, that he's a really nice complementary piece, but not a driver. And I would say if they really honestly thought he was in the $9 million range, my guess is he's closer to 7.5 than he is 9.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, Frank, AFP has him at 7 years at $8.04 million. You don't think he's going to get there? He'll fall just shy of that, you figure?
Someone might step up and pay the extra bit to make sure they get him, but we're probably splitting hairs when that everything that I didn't know the number before you said it, but I said closer to 7.5 than 9.
Yeah.
So 8.0 is right there.
And I throw it at you just because we had great fun with that last week when talking about Filip Hronek, and
yes.
The AFP number on Filip Hronek on a long-term deal is 7 years at $8.36 million. So there you go. And we also did this with Nikita Zadorov recently, which brings us to our Tim Hortons poll question. Mm-hmm. Frank, if the Canucks are going to pay market rate for one of their UFAs, Who should it be? Bluger, Roenick, Joshua, Zadorov? Where are you casting your vote?
Philip Roenick, and I don't even have to think about it. I mean, before someone accuses me again of being his agent, I think Alan Walsh, if he tweets enough, you certainly see that he does a good enough job doing that. I don't need to be anyone's agent, and certainly not carrying anyone's water, just pointing out the realities of the marketplace that include the arbitration case, which we talked about, that includes really, like, to me, all those other guys are replaceable. I love the step forward that Dakota Joshua has taken this year. I love the intelligence that Teddy Bluger has and how he's helped this team's penalty kill and their bottom six. All fine players. Zadorov, like, I think he's a number 4 that I just wouldn't pay $5 million a year for. Philip Roenick, like, he's a half a point per game right shot defenseman who is the best fit that we've seen to this point in the Quinn Hughes experience in Vancouver. Why you'd want to try and go out and replace that when you already have something that works, to me, it's the devil you know. You probably don't love the idea that it could be at 8 times 8, but the fact that that is what the market bears, like, to me, I just wouldn't want to have to go out and find out the hard way what it's like to not have that.
Well, especially with the scarcity of right shot defensemen on the free agent market. I mean, it's an exceedingly difficult
That makes
position.
my point for me,
Yeah.
because you go look at the penalty killers, go look at the third line centers, go look at the guys that bring some physicality and edge. My thought process when it comes to tweaking or working with the bottom 6 in your forward group is, if you have strong culture and strong coaching, you should be able to develop those types of players and or sign them for closer to league minimum than, I don't know what the Dakota Joshua number is on AFP. My guess would be somewhere around 275.
3 by 3, Frank. 3 by 3.
Okay, so perfect. Yeah. I again, like the player, I'm not getting myself in trouble on the cap signing him to 3 times 3.
Okay, but
how many players have the Canucks had over the last 5 seasons that they paid too much to play in their bottom 6?
Well, tons. And the other thing is, if you're replacing Roenick, okay, so let's say you're on the free agent market replacing Roenick. AFP has Brandon Montour, who's 30, incidentally, on a 7-year deal at $8.7 million. So they have him as even more expensive than Philip Roenick for an older player. If in fact you figure, no, we can't pay Roenick, or whatever reason we don't like Roenick, we're going to go try and replace him with a like player, or you're on the trade market peddling, some pretty significant assets to try and replace a top pair or a top 4 right shot defenseman.
You didn't even bring up the other part of this with Philip Roenick, which is they're going to control the trade market if you decide to go that route this summer.
That's right.
You're going to be getting 50 cents on the dollar of what you gave up to get him. So there's some sunk asset costs. Yeah. Throw that on top of all of it and then pay the next guy to come in and do what he's already doing. Do not get yourself wrapped up, if you're the Canucks, in some kind of arbitrary, we can't pay this guy 1 penny more than Quinn Hughes just because we decide that we can't. When again, I made this point a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, last week we talked about all this, Frank. It was why I didn't,
I didn't want to go down.
I didn't want to go too deep.
The point
too
is,
deep down the rabbit hole again. But
yeah, you like, it's an arbitrary rule. It's an RFA deal. They're not apples to apples. So stop.
Yeah, Pesci on the UFA market at 6.7. If you're interested in Carolina, or at least that's what AFP says. The playoffs moving up to Saturday, April 20th from Monday, April 22nd. And as JPAD and Irf and everyone has talked about this week, that'd be a hell of an ask for the Vancouver Canucks to play on the 20th, given that they're in Winnipeg on the evening of the 18th, would have to fly back 2 different time zones to host a game that night. But you tell me, would they ask the Canucks to play on that Saturday night, less than 48 hours after they finish the regular season?
Being
against
tougher
Winnipeg?
For the Edmonton Oilers, they have back-to-backs on the 17th and 18th. I think it's Arizona, Colorado, to then come back and play same time zones, but same thing. Look, I've seen crazier things happen, so I'm not going to say no. I don't know. I haven't asked any of the schedule makers or anyone part of it, but it all depends, as you know. The reason why they're doing it on a Saturday is to get the marquee Saturday audience, that instead of starting the playoffs on a Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday, like they have the last, as long as I can remember it, I've been saying forever, why not start on your best TV day of the week with the best action that everyone can, dive into? There's going to have to be a late window somewhere, whether it's Van, Edmonton, whoever it might be. They're going to want someone to be playing on Saturday, I'd assume. And I've seen quick turnarounds like this. Series go deep. You go from a game 7 to 48 hours later, you're playing game 1 of the next series. Sometimes that happens. I think less than ideal, because especially with a slog in front of you, knowing that you could be playing for 8 weeks of some of the most grueling hockey you have, I'd want to see them kind of go in fresh, but I'm not going to say it's out of the realm of possibility.
Hey, is it possible, because all the Eastern teams play on Wednesday the 17th, not the 18th, is it possible they just go with matinee and the early evening window on Saturday and forget about the late Pacific window?
I hate matinee games. First off, I especially hate matinee playoff games. Just makes it feel like less of an event to me. I don't know why that is. It's possible. And then you leave it to Sunday or Monday, but
because I think you would have the Oilers and Canucks screaming bloody murder if they have to play that Saturday game. And the problem is, can you start Winnipeg at 9 p.m. local time?
I'm not sure.
Would they do that to the Jets?
True, but then you got to look at, I guess, the broadcasters and their windows and what they have in the NBA playoff I believe that's in that.
Of course,
to your point, Frank, you might see an NHL matinee game.
And of course, Winnipeg would have to have home ice in that scenario. I guess you could start Colorado at 8 p.m. local time.
Maybe. Yeah. I mean, what you're also dealing with is building availability too.
Yeah, right.
So there's a whole lot of stuff going on at one time. And by the way, Irv had pointed that out about the playoffs opening on a Saturday. I did add, not pertinent to Canucks fans, but May 6th or May 7th is what it looks like the draft lottery is going to be.
Yes.
Also related to TV windows.
Frank, you don't know how much we would have wanted that information in 9 of the last 10 years or 8 of the last 9 years.
Look, I do what I can. All right.
Right. There was quite a debate on hockey Twitter this week, or maybe not a debate, maybe just quite a episode on hockey Twitter.
You mean like threw someone in a casket and slammed the door? Is that what
well? Yeah, it would appear so. Andrew Berkshire was trying to make a point and made it poorly, and used Zach Hyman as an example of kids who come from means, kids who come from wealthy families having a leg up these days when you take a look at the cost of ice time, equipment, these personal coaches, summer hockey, and all the different things that goes into grooming a National Hockey League players, or at least the thought process of what it takes to breed an NHL player these days. Look, I don't want to get into the debate about Hyman and how hard he worked or anything like that, or how many teams his dad owned in the GTHL, Toronto Minor Hockey. What I do want to know is there any concern at the NHL level about the cost of financing youth hockey these days, and whether or not that could affect the player pool going forward?
I do think that there is. I think that's the biggest barrier from the NHL and hockey going from a niche sport to being something bigger in the US. But what I will say, having navigated the youth hockey and minor hockey waters in the US, is it's shockingly affordable here. So I'll just give you and I don't know what it's like in Canada or in your market, but I'll just tell you a quick story. Any player that's under the age of 10 can go on the Flyers website and sign up for their Learn to Play program, and they will outfit you it from head to toe, helmet to skates, including a stick with a bag and everything, and for free. And you will get 10 on-ice sessions to see whether you like hockey or not.
Wow.
That's every player in the entire area.
That's
There's
fantastic.
no limitation. There's no salary requirement. Anyone, no questions asked. You want to play hockey, you get a free starter set of by the way, really good equipment and 10 on ice sessions. The on ice sessions, I think, cost you a total of $150, but the equipment's free.
And you get to keep the equipment.
And you get to keep the equipment to start off your hockey career.
Terrific.
I do believe the Vegas Golden Knights have done something along those lines as well.
Yeah, how widespread is that?
Almost
Frank?
every team in the U.S. does it. This is some of it's funded by the NHL and NHLPA Goals and Dreams. Some of it's funded directly from the NHL. They have a fund that actually goes towards these programs. Some of it's funded by the teams themselves. So my point is, A, people don't necessarily know about that. Mm-hmm. And B, every kid has the opportunity here, if you want to do it, to go do it.
Mm-hmm. I think the big difference between where you are in the States, Frank, and where we are up here in Canada is ice time. Like you mentioned that a free 10 on ice sessions of ice time. Here you can't get it. Like I know for a fact that guys, when they come skate up here in the winters, in the summers when their seasons are over, next to impossible for some of them to find ice time just to get out there on a sheet. So I think that that's one of the things that adds to it that makes it so much more expensive. Wow. Plus also here, everyone, and to be completely fair, has that dream of their child making the NHL.
That's it. You'd be giving away a lot of equipment if you're, and Irf's also right. One of the big differences between our countries, the U.S. does athletic facilities in a major way. It does it way better than Canada. It seems like we scraped by in Canada. I was living in Toronto at a time. There was not enough ice rinks in Toronto. You came out to Vancouver, it's now an issue. Ice sheets in terms of how few there are in the actual city. You disagree?
I mean, I think there's still other significant barriers. It may be available, but our ice time is way more expensive. We're approaching $500 an hour. That's like seven Canadian.
Yeah, but at least you're being able to pay for it. There aren't even times here where guys can go and get ice. Like I know Bedard couldn't get on the ice.
Who's affording $700 an hour Canadian?
That's the problem with it up in here in Canada.
I think there are lots of different things to break through, whether it's ice availability, whether it's fees and participation, whether it's ice time. There's a long way to go to get there.
Mm-hmm.
I'm always up for having the conversation. I guess my point is like the Hyman part was ridiculous.
Mm-hmm. Well, and as mentioned, I didn't want to go down that, although it is quite odd that his father owned 90 youth hockey teams.
But guess what? Also still owns them. So if you thought like he did it he had 5 kids, one of them made the NHL. And if you thought that it was some sort of play, like I know the junior team he bought, he saved it because it was folding, and they've sent 80 kids to college on scholarships. Like,
yeah, no, it's fantastic.
Not a financial play to like better himself or give it, it wasn't designed, I don't think necessarily to give him. And there's been plenty written about this. Like, it's not like, I guess the point that bothered me was that somehow this guy's a truther and he's out there revealing stuff that, no one wants to talk about. And there's been tons of stories written about this. It's not, no one's pulling a wool over anyone's eyes here. And no one's sitting here saying that this setup and system that we have is perfect. But once you get, like, let's assume that all those accusations are true. Do the Toronto Maple Leafs, do they just say, hey, Zach, come play with Austin Matthews because your daddy has money? Like, that's not how it works.
No, you got to earn your way to the National Hockey League. That much is clear. No matter whether you got the head start of a family that could afford you all the different things that help on the journey to the National Hockey League.
We can all do a better job with that.
Oh, no doubt. Bob Murdoch, former National Hockey Leaguer, has passed away, and his family said it's because of he suffered from CTE. And of course, this in the wake of Chris Simon's death, and his family as well, saying that Chris really struggled in post-hockey life, and we'll find out if he had CTE as well. And Commissioner asked about this last week, Frank, and still isn't convinced scientifically, despite the researchers at Boston University and elsewhere saying, no, this is a thing now. Is it just going to take a change in leadership for the NHL to sort of recognize the truth on CT that, in fairness, other leagues have gotten to prior to Gary and the NHL?
The NFL has gotten there. The U.S. military has gotten there. The National Institute of Health. I mean, there's tons of, I think, definitive studies that have linked repeated hits to the head and head trauma with CTE. I was the one who asked the question of the deputy commissioner because I don't think he's ever been asked. And he was the one who said, Bill Daly, no, and I think the science is lacking. I think the part that I struggle with is the litigation is over as far as I can tell. If there was a business reason or a legal reason, and these are two super intelligent legal minds in Gary Bettman and Bill Daly, if there was a reason to continue to deny, I'd say, sure, like, do whatever it is that you need to quote unquote protect the shield. That's what you're paid to do. But given that suit has been settled, and I'm not a legal expert, but my understanding that it was a class action suit and whoever wanted to could have been party to it, and the terms of the settlement were accepted, that no additional legal ramifications, to my knowledge, face the league, then if that's the case, then it seems like now is the proper time to acknowledge that link does indeed exist. I'll say on the other side of that, separate and apart from it, Chris Simon had a lot of different things going on. He had some family struggles. He had financial struggles. I believe he's one of the players that had his money swindled from him from a financial advisor. There's a lot, I'm sure there was some substance abuse or alcohol abuse that was part of that as well. And his family came out and said, we believe he has CTE, but I'm not saying he doesn't. Only
not diagnosed yet. Yeah.
Only a brain bank can diagnose that. That's because
correct.
It's not possible to be diagnosed in the living. So I think there's more to find out. I think it's a lot deeper than, and there's some societal issues at play, deeper than just saying because Chris Simon was an enforcer, because he had repeated hits to the head, that therefore he has CTE. And even if he does, how do we know how that impacted his quality of life or not? There's still some parts of this that we still need to investigate and figure out. That said, my overall opinion and feel on this is that we ask a lot of these players for our own entertainment value to do different things and put their bodies and their future lives on the line. I just don't think we do enough, meaning the NHL, the NHLPA, the Alumni Association has taken huge strides. Glenn Healy has done amazing work helping hundreds of players behind the scenes that we'd have no idea about, but there's still way more to do.
Indeed. Frank, we'll leave it there. Thank you for this. We'll catch up next week, sir. Enjoy your Easter weekend.
Thanks, guys. Have a good weekend.
Hey, everybody. If you're enjoying what you're seeing here, then follow along with Sekeres and Price on YouTube. I promise more content coming.
The kids call it subscribe on YouTube.
Well, how about liking it?
Do that as well. Smash it right now.